Oh, hi everybody. Welcome back to another Data Tribe Coffee Hour. This is our end of July meetup. And today we're going to be presenting on Summer 20 release readiness, which is a topic that's very close to my heart. Whenever we do release readiness, I have a quick little anecdote that I like to share. Back in the Spring 16 release, they added a feature where we can now hit Control E to get to our dashboard editor. Before that, we had to go to this convoluted /apex or apex/insights.apex. And it was really hard to find, and there was no link in the UI, and this is where you had to add a dashboard code. Now, once the new release came out, if you moved a widget on the dashboard, it would remove that dashboard from the legacy editor, and you would have to use Control E to edit.
Oh my gosh, I remember that.
I thought it was a bug. So I logged a case with Salesforce. Meanwhile, I had this wall of numbers dashboard, which was totally not best practice, and had 40 different number widgets on it. And we realized we needed an additional column. So I had to go through the JSON and move them all over by anywhere from 12, 8, 10, different pixels to get it to line up right. It took me hours and hours to do what I should have been able to do in the UI in a matter of minutes. Salesforce gets back to me. They say this is expected functionality, and they link me to the release notes. And I felt silly about that day. Never again. I would be release ready. So in my company, we do an internal release readiness. I do new release content on my channel typically 2 months before it hits prod. But here we are today to help you be release ready. So don't be like Pete 2016. Last thing I'll say is today I'm in disguise as Pete's evil twin, so that if I screw anything up, I can blame it on real Pete. I'll never see that coming. All right, first presenter, kick us off.
Phil, you are on mute.
You want me to do Safe Harbor?
Yeah, go for it, Pete.
Okay, yeah, forward-looking statement. So slide 2, please. Who's driving slides? All right, Safe Harbor. Please make purchasing decisions based on currently available technologies. While we are showing things that have made it into prod with the Summer 20 release, we oftentimes talk about roadmap, or we just make stuff up as we go along. Remember, none of us here work for Salesforce, unless somebody in the audience does. Not that I'm aware of. I didn't look at all the names, but we are not the voice of the product. We are not the voice of what's going to be out there. This is commentary, not documentation. Please swim in safe harbors, and don't be like me. Don't build blackjack and then install it in prod. Next slide. We've got an overview. We've got a bunch of different presenters. We're all taking turns on this. We've been collaborating on this for a couple of weeks now to get this all ready. We leveraged one thing that we did leverage for reference material in addition to the release notes was a new thing called Release in a Box. If you Google Salesforce Summer 20 Release in a Box, you'll find it. Super cool. That's really great for bringing your internal team up to speed on everything in the release. Please be mindful, though, it's definitely that 60,000 foot view. So if you want to get into the granular features that are going to apply to your specific business needs, I would recommend dig into the release notes, try these things out before they hit prod, and make sure that you know what's coming. So who's up first?
I got it, Pete. Thanks, boss. So yeah, one of the biggest things that I absolutely love is some of the changes to templates or additional templates that they added. So in addition to updates around healthcare and analytics and customer lifecycle analytics and manufacturing enhancements, there's also this template for design best practice, which is fantastic to get something up, build out your assets in a consistent theme, and deploy them based on a style guide that you can leverage for an entire app. I absolutely love it. I can store all of my color palettes for the company that I work for. I can do custom branding, so created a logo that says Client Informatics Agency or CIA, as we like to call ourselves. And then you can update all of your templates. You can update widgets and say, this is the font that I want to see in this type of a setting. Really, really valuable to give your end users a consistent experience as they work through and are interacting with your assets that you're creating. Absolutely love it. It doesn't take long to go ahead and deploy it and build it out. It's a very simple template there that you can just go ahead, click, create, click on those templates and you have the plethora of options there, which they're constantly updating. Next slide. I think these are, I'm going to be pretty succinct because I know what we have later on in the presentation that I think is going to get a little bit more engagement. But another really big transition, especially on the data connection side, is the ability to run your recipes, run your data flows at smaller increments of time rather than just at an hour. Now we can actually go in and we can run it at 15 or 20 minute or 30-minute increments. So if we have a situation where, especially for maybe a smaller data run or data flow that isn't going to hit against your overall number for your organization, so what we got 60 runs available to us. So if you have one that's going to take less than that threshold, and you can run it every 15 minutes and give your end users that much more data, that more timely, it's going to benefit them a lot. Do we have a question? No.
I had this on before, like the minute the release started to try and manage all of our data flows. This is an awesome.
No, I was just commenting that the way that we used to have to do this would be to clone out data flows. And prior to this release, one feature that I don't think we even covered was the increase in the number of data flows you can create. So we used to have a cap of 30. So let's say you got 8 or 10 different templated apps running. You're chewing up a lot of your data flows. And then, we want sales analytics to run every 15 minutes. Well, now we have 4 different copies of it. And, oh, we need an extra field. And then we forget to put that field in. And it breaks anything that's using it. It was a total nightmare. Don't do that thing. But fortunately, now you don't have to. Also, if you need less than 15 minutes, you might want to consider some of the real-time options.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep. One thing I would add is now you can send your data out to S3 from this. So it's not just incoming data, you can also send out your data and it goes and S3 becomes your repository in a lot of cases. So that's an excellent feature as well.
Yeah, and really the last thing that I wanted to touch on is those direct connections, live connections from MuleSoft. There's a lot of content out there, or just some overview content that's out there in that summer release in a box that Peter mentioned, that you can go and you can review for yourself. They do have a YouTube video out there that explains a little bit more of what that entails, but it allows your end users to be able to access your Snowflake data lakes and get access to that live real-time data. All right, now to something a little bit more interesting. Going to pass it off to talk about Einstein Discovery.
Okay, Einstein Discovery. So, okay, I have taken the slides partly from the YouTube channel of Pete's, where Bobby Brill actually gave a presentation on Einstein Discovery. So what you're seeing here, you can find in much more detail if you go into Bobby's video with Pete. So few things to start with: correlation calculations. So correlation calculations till date wouldn't refresh if you take out a filter from, if you filter on say partner or you filter on dependents, it wouldn't, you have to refresh the whole story for the correlation metrics to come up and refresh itself. Well, now we don't have to wait for the story to be created. If you click this very small icon here, which is a refresh button, this correlation metrics now refreshes immediately as soon as you filter out your data. So that's one extremely cool and great thing. Other things that have changed is till date, we only had GLM in Einstein Discovery. Now we have tree-based models, which is GA. So we have GBM and XGBoost. For some of you who want to know more about this, let me try figuring it out. Can someone tell me where I see the notes here?
So I'm not going to lie, in my attempts to do this, so you go to that model where it's like, these are my fields, these are my fields, these are my fields. You're going to see this drop down in the top right that says GLM. When Bobby clicked the drop down, thing showed up. When I click the drop down, I see GLM. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
We're data people. We're not slide people.
I'm not gonna lie. I tried it once, and after about 5 minutes, I'm like, yeah, I got plenty of other tasks I need to be working on right now, so we'll figure this one out later. That was yesterday.
Okay, so small notes on all of these. GLM is a linear model. It's called general linear model. It existed till the last release. Now we have GLM plus GBM, which is the gradient boost machine, and XGBoost, which is the extreme gradient boost. Your best bet to look at these, other than Bobby's presentation with Pete, is going to salesforceblogger.com, where Ricky has given an excellent explanation of how to do Einstein Discovery in detail. Next is Salesforce. By default, it chooses the best model. Now that we have 4 models in this, Salesforce chooses the best model for each of your story. So it can be XGBoost, it can be GLM, and random forest is now in pilot. So if you have the pilot turned on, it can be random forest as well. Why GLM? Because GLM was great for explainability, but now Salesforce has figured out a way that 3 models can also be explained. Something in the world of data science we call is a black box, like neural networks is a black box because you really don't understand what is going inside and why something has been predicted. Unlike these, which will explain why it has been predicted and how better you can do with each of the models. Coming to each of the models, you can now compare the different model versioning as it's written here, and I'm going to explain that in a minute. But we can now compare different models with different versions. Versioning came out last release. This release, comparing models with versions is new. Adding to that is regression model types. Regression model types are basically when you are predicting a number, say the cost, the number of products that you are going to sell, those are called the predicting numbers. And it looks at the R-squared value and it picks the model which has the highest R-squared. Similarly, when it's a binary number, which is basically in other terms you can call 0 or 1 or true or false, for those cases, it looks at the area under the curve and chooses the best one that fits your model. That is how Salesforce chooses which is your best model. Correlation calculations I've already explained. Then, so the previous release, we had an issue. I was working on Einstein Discovery and then realized I cannot do more than 20 million rows. Well, each of our data set has more than 100 million rows, so 20 million rows doesn't cut it for us. So this release, it is 100 million rows. So at least I will be personally going back and doing more of Einstein Discovery now that I can actually leverage it. Okay, so this is the correlation metrics. As I was explaining, there's the refresh button, and you can refresh your correlations as you filter down your data without running the story itself. This is where you're comparing your versions. As you can see, it says compare versions. So minus 7.18 versus the previous version. You are down 21.6% from your previous version. All these are coming in here. Also, you can actually see this is your current version, and this is the version you are comparing to, how they compare against each other, which is really, really cool. You don't have to do any kind of maths on this anymore. Deploy models. Initially, till the last release, whenever you deploy a model, it would ask you to create a new model. Right now, you don't have to create a new model anymore. You can actually go and replace your existing model. How cool is that? Okay, or you can actually deploy as a new prediction if you want to. But this is extremely useful that you can replace your existing model without creating new things. So traditionally, the scoring of records in Einstein Discovery was when you updated a record. Well, now you can score all records within Einstein Discovery. So all you do is select either a subset, select all your records, or select any account records that haven't reached a terminal state, and then it scores everything for you right then and there. You don't have to go and manually update your records. This is basically bulk updating your scores. Bias protection for sensitive fields, extremely important for people like who have gender, marital status, age, those kind of fields in their data. So for each of those fields, you can mark it as a sensitive data. As you can see, this variable contains sensitive data, and that is going to pick it up and it's going to hide those fields, or it's just going to protect it. Coming to Einstein analytics, this is where it gets more and more cool. So I'm not going to read this through, sorry, Einstein analytics. I'm not going to read this through, but I'm going to show you directly what's going on. So Einstein analytics, we are going to start
Yes,
with.
please read the whole entire slide to us, because we're those kind of people, right?
No, we put the data in the slide so that if people want to download the deck, they can read it. They can get to links, but never read the slide unless you're like reading the title.
Exactly.
But reading is hard. Just read it to us. That's so much easier.
We did this for you.
Someone call Siri. We need a reader.
Okay, so the watch list. So how do you create a watch list? Watch list comes from numbers. So number widgets. So all you do is go add it to a watch list, and you can name your metrics. You can say if the increase is a positive change or the increase is a negative change. And once you do that, you go back to your watch list, it gives something like this. When you initially create a watch list, which I created, this processing error was I created yesterday, and it refreshes every day at 8 a.m. As you can see, it's 8 a.m. all through. So it refreshes at 8 a.m. Since I created it yesterday, all it has is yesterday's value, and that's why you're not seeing any value here. As opposed to the records process, which was started on 13th of March, and that's why I have this massive amount of scrolling that's going on. And it was Sunday to Monday, and that's why you have a 3,000% jump, because technically no one goes into Salesforce and works on Sundays until and unless you're a geek. So that's why this jump. Also, it's interesting to see this one has a 0% jump. Why? Because it's 100 million. But if you see, the values actually are changing every day, but the change is so small compared to 100 million that you don't actually see a number here. So that's
put an idea up for setting a custom domain on this.
The other thing is you can change the order of this, which is, say I want my 100 million to be the first one, so I can push it there, and I can push these any order I want. So there it is. You can switch your watch lists the way you want. After watch list, we are going to do subscription to tables. So before I go into subscription to tables and the learning journey, subscription to tables is a settings that you have to go and turn on in the permission sets for Einstein Analytics. Without that, permissions for subscription to tables will not turn on. It's in beta, but still you need to turn the settings on in the permission sets for Einstein Analytics. Secondly, subscription is not allowed in communities yet. So if you're working with community, don't even try, because it doesn't work. Although you are going to see the field there, you'll see in the permission sets, you'll see it. But if you try turning it on, it is going to say that you cannot turn it on for partner community users. So just to be clear. Okay, subscription to tables, sorry. Subscription to tables is basically click here, go to subscribe. It's going to ask you for a name. Let's say, I'm going to name this coffee hour. Font type. Subscribe. See this small envelope here? This is how it looks. So once you hide this, this envelope goes off. Again, you click this, it turns on. Then you have something for a coffee hour and a taxi data, which I already had done. I can delete this because I don't want to get the same data twice. And this comes up. The beauty of doing subscriptions is if you have enabled filters on this, and then you are subscribing to the table, what data you are going to get is the filtered data only. And you can subscribe it weekly, however you want. So if I go to subscriptions, this is where we set it. So edit, Do you want it weekly or daily? At what point of time do you want it? And then the status should be enabled. If you turn this off, it's not going to send you any subscriptions. So talking about subscriptions, there is, let me see. Let's open up. Sorry, 1 second. I have it open. Yep. So this is the subscription that you can see how it comes in. As you can see, if I click this, it's going to open the data to the dashboard again, which I'm not going to do. It's the taxi data. It was last updated on August 12, 2018. It's sending me a CSV file, which is attached over here. And the other things are the Einstein Analytics logo, the CSV icon, and an SFDC logo. So basically what you need is the CSV file to open the dashboard. Okay, that's about subscriptions. The next one in Einstein Analytics is the learning journey, which is an awesome tool because you don't have to create help guidelines separately as a separate page and use one of the 20 pages that's available. You can actually do something like learn, and you can see it here that this is one of Pete's video on Dataflow basics that I have put here. To do this, all you do is click on this table or click on any widget actually. Then it's
Onboarding on the bottom right.
Yep, no, I was trying to reduce this number of people showing on my screen.
This is pretty nifty. I haven't seen this part.
So
Yeah.
go to onboarding, name it whatever you want. I like naming it learn so that people understand that it is something they can learn about. And then I added a YouTube link, which apparently has to be the embedded YouTube link. And I learned that today. So this is what you do. Then you can preview your content and it shows up here. So you can put in Wikipedia, you can put in anything. There are some restrictions. To find what the restrictions are, I would say please go and read the help document. It clearly states what the restrictions are of what cannot be embedded in the learn section.
I'm going to embed the SACL cheat sheet.
I wonder if you can bind into it.
I don't think so.
We're going to find out.
We are going to find out. We can find out right now. Let's see.
Like if you're working on a date, the date SACL cheat sheet pops up.
If you just Control E and Control F for YouTube, it might be stored in Asset XMD. So if it's not, if it's in the Asset XMD, then that's a definite no.
That it is.
Okay, so it is being stored as a URL parameter. I found that not all parameters are bindable, especially when it comes to URLs. So like link widgets, you can't dynamically change either a dashboard or a page target, but you can change a URL parameter target. It's not officially supported. I don't think it's that buggy. I mean, it's usually not that buggy. I've definitely done some kludgy stuff with it. But my real question is, you know, as much as I love the same shameless self-promotion, why didn't you take that as an opportunity to rickroll us?
What?
Never.
Because they don't have any future release features. Come on now, Pete.
You have to explain what rickrolling is, Peter.
Whenever I have an opportunity to show a video of something else on my channel, 90% of the time it's Rick Astley. But you know, one time it was the honest trailers for Waterworld.
Come on, Pete. This is Salesforce, so I'm going to stick to videos of Salesforce. So that is about Einstein Analytics, and next is more demos. I'm stopping to share.
Go back to Rick Astley.
All right, so first, just one moment here. Uh-oh.
Northeast Dreamin' hat? Yep.
Yeah, yes, it is. And oh, thank gosh. I thought I got logged out of the wrong one.
Zach is here to keep us all in check.
Yeah, this is a Northeast Dreamin' presenter hat. So one moment here. I'm trying to queue up the video so that I can.
I heard it. That's cool that you got a hat. I went to Cactus Force and they didn't give. No, they gave me a shirt. I lied. Never mind.
I taught a hands-on training, so maybe it was special. But where is my present. Oh, because I'm looking at the Zoom logo, not at the Ring Central.
We're just watching your hat in the meantime and admiring.
There we go. Now I found the Ring Central controls. Now I can share my screen. So yes, this is a Rickroll. But it's only a
Dance party.
It's only a Rickroll if you tell somebody, hey, you know, here's the thing, and then you give them this instead. If you're deliberately watching this, it's not a Rickroll, then it's just nostalgia. So first feature I'm going to cover, I'm actually going to cover these out of order because, you know what, watch this. Boom. Fixed it. So the first feature that we're going to be covering is the blended UI. Really simple use case here. I have a data set that stores all of my opportunities, and I have a data set that stores all of my sales reps' quota. And I would like to answer a very simple and reasonable question that my business needs to know. What percentage to goal are my reps? Traditional Salesforce reporting allows us to do this with my nemesis, the joined report. You can do this with advanced data modeling techniques that you can find on my channel. You can do it with outer joins and recipes. But either way, you're going to be creating complex data sets. What we really need to be able to do is pick data set 1 and pick data set 2 and smash them together. We gained the ability to do this in the prior release, but the problem was we only had that juxtaposition where I could show you opportunity amounts and I could show you quota amounts, but I couldn't actually get to that calculation. So for me, it was like, well, that's kind of the same as having 2 charts side by side. Who cares if they're grouped together? I can do that with a simple sort, but we have that now. So let's take a look at how it works. So I have my DTC opportunity data set right here. And now the important thing to remember, you cannot add additional data sets if you mess with any of this stuff. You have to do it right up front at the beginning. It's not smart enough to catch up with you when you've already gone step 2, step 3, step 4. So I'm going to click Add Dataset right here, and I'm going to grab the dataset named New Dashboard. If anybody can figure out why this dataset is named New Dashboard number 1, 3 points to you. Here's a hint. It has a created date about an hour and a half ago. So now we can group our data by common values. So if I look at the DTC opportunity dataset, I have an owner field for my account owner. So I've got my opportunity owners, and then I've also got a username field, which is going to carry the same data points. Now you can group by things that totally don't make sense. Like you could have opportunity owners and industries. It's just not going to make sense. Now, another thing to be aware of, so now that I've added this grouping, I do have control over those joins. So right now I've got the left blend selected by default, which means that if values are found in my primary data set, you know, my base frame, which was my DTC opportunities, let's say I have a user that has opportunities but no quota, they will still show up. Let's say that I have a user that has quota but no opportunities, which is a much more realistic use case. It's the beginning of the quarter, you haven't sold anything yet, fine. They are not going to show up, and the way that you're going to govern over that is with these different blends. So right now, this is opties and quotas, but not quotas without opties. This is the reverse of that, where it'll drop the opportunity, but it'll keep the quota owner. There's an inner blend that only shows when you have both, and then there's an outer blend that will show either or. So we do have the ability to choose our different blend types. Now I'm going to do a couple of different updates here to show this more realistic, what are we actually trying to get to here. So now I'm looking at my users by sum of amount. I'm also going to sort them descending. Nope, not by this count. Now I can choose to look at a measure on my other data set when I add a new one. So I want to look at the quota amount on my new dashboard 1 data set. And we can see people are progressing towards their quotas at various rates, but when I hover, you can see that this is still Bruce Kennedy. So it's aligning by those dimensional values, by whatever it is that we're grouping on. So we used to write a ton of code for this. I literally have an entire series called Sacco Basics, and I would say 3 of those videos are focused on doing just this sort of thing. So I get to go mark them as deprecated now. Then the next thing we want to do, and this is where we really start to take it over the top and get toward what I'm considering a much more finished product. I'm going to click Add Formula. And I can do something. Oh, wait, no. I have to get rid of it. No, you see nothing. I skipped a step. I only want to see the opportunities that are won. Because if you didn't win that opportunity, it does not count toward your quota. So I'm going to add a filter that only applies to that primary data set. No, it looks like I can only add aggregate filters. I did this before. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Well, regardless, we're just going to incentivize everybody for everything. Another feature that was added was the ability to filter on date fields. So let's see, I'm going to do, I would do A over B, and I want to format that as a percentage, hit apply, and then close. So, yep, that does seem right, about right. Bruce Kennedy has 54 million out of a goal of 25, so he's at 200%. I think this is what I'm actually supposed to do. Yeah, so over here on the filters tab, I want to say that we only want to see DTC opportunities that are wins. So I would go 1 equals true. Now, let's see if we can take this to the next level and get a win ratio chart out of this. And I didn't actually plan on doing this, but this one's one that I've gotten down to pretty quick science. So let's see how fast I can blast it out. So first thing, I'm going to hop over to my data tab. We do need the percentage at the top because it's on a scale of 0 to 100, while everything else is in the scale of millions. So we want that to be our left axis. Now I'm going to switch over to combos, which is under our line chart. I'm going to go into formatting. Now, the first thing I need to do is I need to get them all on a combined axis. So I'm going to set this to dual axis mode. Now we see, oh, and again, I have to move this up now that I've switched to combo charts. Now we have our percentage on the left, and we have our dollar values on the right-hand side. Now we're going to stack bars, and we need to go to series and customize the series. None of this is new release feature, by the way. I just think that this is what I've been waiting for, that I used to have to write a ton of code for. So first, C, that's going to be our percentage to goal. I want to set this one to be a line. And I can totally rename that to win rate if I want. Then I'm going to go to my sum of amount or my percent to goal. I'm going to set that to be a bar. And then I'm going to go to my sum of quota, and I'm going to set that to be a bar. So now I can see this is what my total value is. So I would probably want to do like quota minus sum of amount to have that B value, because then it's like, hey, when the bar fills, I'm at 100%. But we've been doing this one a lot lately with, we do closed ones, closed lost, and then we do a win rate. Super killer chart. And you don't need to be doing the blended UI to be able to do this kind of trick. And then just one thing to watch out for, if you do need to bind into it and change the grouping value, like I want to be able to see this by industry, or I want to be able to see this by close date year month. Column map will be your nemesis. I have a hacky workaround to get around that to be able to bind into this. If you need that, hit me up. I'm easy to find. So now, boom, there's our blended query. I wrote no SACL for that whatsoever. In fact, almost all of that could be done with my right hand. In fact, I didn't bother to rename the column. So I think the only time that I was typing was for the search to find the field names faster. You could do this all with just your mouse. So this takes us, we'll transition from that to our next feature, which is dynamic text. So another situation where we had to write a lot of bindings, not necessarily code, sometimes code, but usually just a lot of bindings. Now, in order to do this, I'm actually going to sort this by C descending, because I want the people with the highest quota performance to be at the beginning. I'm going to update that now. So we're going from quota performance left to right. Now, let's say I wanted to have a text widget to go, you know, ha ha ha, let everybody else know who is my favorite right now, so that maybe they will want to be my favorite as well.
Okay, Pete, I have to ask you a question while you're typing.
Yep.
You click so fast on there. What did you click on to show how you changed that line?
I double clicked on here. Then I hovered over this drop down for C. I clicked on it and I selected sort descending. That's currently grayed out because that's the way we're sorting it. But if I go like this, it's going to flip around backwards. I can clear the sort to restore it to how it originally was, where we're sorting alphabetically by the first letter of the user's first name. But I'm going to put it back to that sort descending and then hit update.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So congrats. Now, who do we want to congratulate? We want to go and select a query. And it's this lens one. Fortunately, it's the only query on the dashboard, but I would recommend using the rename feature right here to name it something useful.
Oh my gosh, we used to have to do so much code to do the text.
I just did all of the code like 3 or 4 months ago, and it took forever. And now it's like we could just do it in a few clicks.
I would have paid to have this feature like 2 years ago.
I have a dashboard that I built for my client that they use to take screenshots to make a slide deck. Not the best practice, but yeah, we can do that. And their CEO has like a top-down edict that every slide must be able to stand for itself. So they pick a fiscal quarter, and the dashboard header needs to be able to dynamically change to let them know, you know, this is Q1 versus Q2 of fiscal 20 performance, and then provides a date range. Yeah, you write that binding. So
I'll leave that to you.
it's not fun. It's not fun stuff. So now I'm going to pick my quota attainment step. And the field I want is that opportunity owner. And it's natively just going to give me the first one. I can choose between results and selections for either the value that's being returned or the value of what the user has clicked on. I'm going to leave it as results. And because there's multiple groupings, it's just going to give me the very first option that's on there. That's why I sorted them that way. If you need a different option, you got to build out some different queries for that. So then next, congrats, opportunity owner. I'm not restricted to just one of these. And then I can do this same thing again. And I can do this on as many different steps as I want. It doesn't care about, you know, it doesn't care about what data set it's coming from. It's like so great. We also got this for reference lines in the previous release. And now if we take a look at that, boom. Congratulations, Nicole Weaver. Your quota attainment is at 322.58. Oh, Nicholas Weaver. Now, just to demonstrate that this is actually dynamic, I'm just going to slap a quick filter on here. And we're going to filter by opportunity owner. Now, mind you, the opportunity owner is not the same as the quota user on the other data set. So we also want to get rid of that. The way we're going to do that, connect data sources. And again, I'm going way off the rails here. So if I'm hurting us on time, let me know. Oh, snap. Jen's got the best thing. I'm going to finish up in like 30 seconds. So DTC opportunity owner name, choose new dashboard, user, Dunzo, close. So now, just to show that it is dynamic, if I filter out and I go does not equal Nicholas Weaver, apply, there. Now, Dennis Howard, it's your turn to get a trophy. Last feature that I'm going to cover, so that was demo 1, that was demo 2, pivot tables. Oh, too bad, we're going to have to crush this in like 30 seconds. ETC opportunities. Let's say that I have a pivot table, so I'm grouping by industry. Come on, faster. I'm grouping by industry, and then I add a second grouping for close date year month, because I want to see how many rows I have in these industries across time. The problem was I was restricted to only have one measure. Now, how many measures can I have? Okay, well, that's 2. That's 3. Let's do unique of accounts. And I tested this up to like 9, and the only problem was it started getting very, very difficult to read. So the limitation is just going to be about, well, what can you fit on a screen before it doesn't make sense whatsoever. So now we do have pivot tables that support multiple measures. And also, let's do on sum of amount, we are going to go into formatting. We're going to go into column, and we're going to select our sum of amount column, and we're going to set a conditional formatting rule to say that when count of rows, let's pick a reference column of count of rows is greater than 2, then, or if it's less than 2, actually we'll make that less than 3 because I see a 3 on the screen, less than 3, I want the text color to be red, and I want the background color to be gray. And if it's greater than 3, I want the text color to be green, and I want the background color to be a different gray just to show that it does a different thing. Apply, we can add additional bins. This feature has been supported on a lot of different widgets for a while now, little by little, to keep adding more. Pivot table was one of the guys that was just missing out. Well, here it is. Boom, I'm done. Jen, I pass to you.
Before you pass on to Jen, can you open the pivot table once more? No, not a question. Can you open the pivot table once more? Great.
Oh, yes, again. Did I miss a feature?
No, you didn't. I just want to tell something. So in the pivot table, exactly like you can do in compare tables, each of these columns are actually filterable. So convert it into a compare table, add the filters. Then if you convert it into a pivot table, those filters come through.
Yep. So you can have the same measure, sum of closed won, sum of closed lost, sum of open pipe, sum of quota attainment. Awesome stuff. Always, the table is your first weapon of choice in the question of how am I going to get this calculation. Jen, over to you.
Now I got to unmute and do it all. Okay, first of all, everybody, I am at my standing desk for the first day. My company sent me a standing desk, yay. So I'm at this weird angle. Let me share my screen. Who out there loves data flows? Who out there, maybe this is primarily where you work, because that's where I work, is mostly in the data flow UI. Sorry, I'm trying to get my, there we go, screen up. Okay, before I actually show you the slides on here, I want to tell everybody, if you're ever making fake data, I went through the trouble to make you fake data for this demo. And so during this making fake data, I remembered how hard it is to make fake data, but Mockaroo is the best site if you want to do that. So I thought I would share that with everybody. Okay, because slides are not my jam, are you putting the slides up and I don't have to do anything? Is that the way this works?
You don't have to do anything. We are going to send the slides anyway, right?
Okay, can you put the slides up while I'm sharing, or do I have to stop sharing?
You have to stop sharing. So
actually,
let me check. Multiple participants can share simultaneously. Let's do that.
No, that puts it on two different displays. I'm pinging the link to I'm pinging the link to the chat.
This is real life, guys.
Like I have said it.
I have the slides. I'll just do my own slides. How about that?
Okay.
Yep.
Well, if you need them, link to the slides is in the. There we go. They're right there. Yeah, that's why I like to say this is like the MTV Unplugged of webinars.
I'm glad everybody thinks I'm unplugged here. So we saved the best for last here, or, you know, I really enjoyed seeing what the centers had, especially like Phil, the templates. I didn't realize they made that templates for company coloring. Oh, I'm going to so not be in trouble now that that came out, because when I make my dashboards, I never use the company colors, and then I always get chewed out for it. I don't know if anybody else does. All right, so a couple of things came out that we've been asking for several years. One of them is Dataflow Versioning. I don't know about everybody else on here, but I have to download my JSON like every time I save. And then I'm always scared that if somebody wants me to put something back, or I accidentally click on the node and got rid of it, that it's, you know, I didn't know I did it, and then the data flow is not going to run. So I've constantly, every single day, probably have 25 to 50 JSON backups of my data flows. So what I gave you in this slide was where you can find the actual, you know, on the release notes, like all about it. But I want to show you what it actually does. So last night I decided I was going to make some fake data on a happy tone here. Beaches, since we're all trapped inside and we're not traveling as much, I decided I would do beaches and visitors. And as I was building this data flow, and I was, you know, edgemarting in, you know, the beaches, and then visitor 1, visitor 2, I saved everything that I did. So for example, if I go here and I say, oh, okay, visitors to beaches. Maybe I want to change this to visitor to beach. I don't want it plural. Let's just say. And I save it. And then I update the data flow. It asks me, what did I do? And I'll say, change, augment, description. Update data flow. And guess what? Now that's here in your change. So no more JSON downloads. I will tell you this, if you're using either the EA dashboard helper plugin or maybe one of your data sets is running in data sync. While you do this, there can be some small conflicts between your updates and your versions and when the data is syncing. So it's still a good idea to back up your JSON, but this kind of takes the scary part out, right? Because you know you have all these different versions in here. So I'm still kind of doing my bad habits, you know, or maybe they're good habits, right? I'm still doing things the way that I used to, but now that we have this, it's amazing. And there's this drop down right here. So let's say you did one and you didn't want to, you know, keep it for whatever reason, you can delete it. Pete, do you know if there's a limit to how many it saves down to?
From the hip, I think it's 10, but you'd have to test. I mean, previously when you could pull them via the workbench, I think it only saved up to 10.
Exactly. So, you know, if somebody came back to me later and said, you know, I decided that I don't want this augment, I only want visitors 1, and I don't want 2 lists of visitors in there, you could actually just revert it back. And we'll just do this for fun. So this is when I added visitors 2. I didn't have the rest of it built. So let's say I wanted to go back here and just take my visitors 2 out and rebuild it. I could do that. Or let's say, well, maybe that's not exactly what I want. I want to fix my append. Or, you know, I want to fix my augment. It's really awesome. If you have a small data flow like this, you can go back and make adjustments and still keep all your work. Be really careful if you have a large data flow. I have a large data flow. I know a lot of you on the call do. Data flows that you might, you know, you don't want to overwrite anything. Or what if somebody else is working in it? Well, okay, guess what? If somebody else is working in it, their changes are going to be in here too. So what we found is this was really good if there's 2 or 3 of us that are all making changes in the same data flow during the day at different times. We know exactly when they did it. So lots of good, yummy reasons to use this. Now, if we go back to these slides, well, if I can move my menu around and get to the slides. This is the slide that I'm giving you so you can remember what I showed you on versioning. Data prep. This is going to be the future of data flows. It's not quite there yet. We're only in beta, but you're going to see little inklings of what's going to happen in the future. Now, this is Salesforce's release notes, and this is a picture from their release notes. And I'm not going to recommend that you go in there and try and do everything they did all at once. You kind of need to learn what each little piece and part does before you try and build something complex. Me, of course, the way that I'm wired, I decided that I was going to try a very complex scenario the first time I got on here, and I was very frustrated because anytime you learn something new and a brand new UI, you're supposed to read the instructions, right? I don't read the instructions. I just build things. So anytime there's a new UI, it's a new way of doing things, breaking old habits. So we still have a good year, I think, before everything's going to move over to it, Safe Harbor. But I would recommend going in there and start playing with it now to see the parts and pieces. Oh, and don't do what I did. I was in my dev org and I was like, why don't I have this feature? Like, did I get the wrong kind of dev org? You have to enable it right here. If you do not enable this, you're going to get regular old recipes because this is housed under the recipe tab. And so I was looking for it and couldn't figure it out. And then finally I decided to go look in settings and boom, I found this. All right. So this is an example of what I built and I'm going to show it to you live, but I did put a slide with this so that you would have a reference as I did very, very simple features on this data flow. Let's go back to the data manager. Let's go to recipes. Let's do beaches by state with stats. And let me show you one thing on here. See how it has this big, like, you won't be confused about whether you're working in the beta version or not because you're gonna have this giant beta with an exclamation point. But here's the difference between them is that if you go to recipes, so if you're in your data flows and then you go to recipes, you go create with data prep, and then it says create with data prep beta. You always want to choose this one not regular data prep. They haven't quite changed the naming conventions where they're consistent throughout. Regular create with data prep will take you to an enhanced version of recipes, where this one will take you to the regular UI. All right, so let's go back to the beaches. Oops. Beaches by state with stats. All right, this isn't very complex, but I want to show you something really amazing that this does. So you're in this new UI, you're trying to worry about, you know, how do I get acclimated to it? Where do I find everything? If you are an Excel person and you like spreadsheets, you're going to love this, because this is really along the lines of, I'm visual, so I use the diagrams. That's where I work in all the time. And then I can change this to the columns. So when I click on any one of these nodes, I can see exactly what's in it. This is what makes sense to me. Now, if you're an Excel person and a spreadsheet person, you have a spreadsheet view. I call it a spreadsheet view of all your columns in here. So this is actually made with no code. There's no code anywhere in here. You can't even go on the back end and cheat with the JSON. So for any of you who are worried about, you know, oh, I don't know if I should work with Einstein Analytics because, you know, there's code, you know, SQL and JSON. Well, somebody heard you out there and said, we're going to make an interface for you to architect data and not have to do any code. But for those of you who do code, you're going to find that as a limitation. So there's, you know, two sides to this coin. So it starts out with you create, you know, this would be equivalent to a digest in a regular data flow. And you pick your fields that you want to pull in. And then it asks you what you want to do next. So this node is called an aggregate node. And I was like, I'm going to try this out and kind of see what kind of cool stuff it does. And so I decided I was going to group the beaches by state. You could even group them by another one. You know, you can group by one or two fields. Now, if anybody is familiar with regular data flows on here, we used to have to use compute relatives to group and roll up and do different things, right? So now this is just built in. Like, what do you want to group by? Let's group by 2 if you want. And these are the aggregates that I chose. So how many of you get kind of sick in your dashboards of, I need to make, you know, 10 lenses and I have to do like the same calculation over and over and over again to that data set. Well, now you can actually make the calculations in this like mini data set. And so when you make your dashboard, you can just pull in the number and it's already in these functions. So I decided, I used ID, which would be the unique beach ID. And I said, how many of them are there? What's the average? And I'm gonna go ahead and put the column view on here. What's the minimum, the maximum? And there's more functions than that. You just would have to figure out what works for you. And then you make another node after that called the output. Instead of, you know, in the Dataflow UI, you're working in that little tiny screen writing, you know, what the name and the API name is. You just do it right here. And you can check your work while you're working. I kind of like this, so no surprises if you did something wrong. It tells you right here. You don't have to run your data flow for 2 hours and then find out that something was wrong with it. So let me show you what this data looks like when it comes out of here. If I can get it to go back to that, sorry. There we go. Here I just opened a lens on that data set and we already have measures. You know, they're already in here. So if I want to, you know, before I would have to make a lens on just, you know, going ahead and calculating it here. Now I can just pull it. So if we want to do like a compare table and we want to group by, oh, I hope it's not going to be whack on me here. So we want to do, you know, sum of rows. This is what you would normally do. And don't mind the numbers on here. The numbers are probably kind of skewed. But we would normally come in here and have to do sum of rows and then save it, right? And instead, we're just doing that here in data prep, you know, so it's kind of nice. We already have things done. And then a good use case that I would give people that would, you know, in your own org that you would have to do is, for example, what if you need to sum up all the open opportunity amounts and roll it up to the account? You could do that right here. You could put accounts with opportunities, sum the amounts, and then when somebody's looking at account data, it's equivalent to like a roll-up field in Salesforce if you're an admin, but you can do all kinds of crazy things, or a formula field. So you can do this without any code and not using a compute relative, even though it's one of my favorite nodes. You can do it pretty easy here. So I'm having to kind of rewire my brain a little bit to say, oh, we don't have to do this complex code and what's coming in the future. We can actually just go in and click on buttons in the UI. Now let me show you the other one I did, just so you can have, and I could show you like a lot of different things that this does, but I just wanted to show you easy use cases. Something that you could go try yourself. So this one here, it looks complex, but it's not really super complex. So what I did was I took visitors 1 and visitors 2, and I used the append function. I really love the append function in here. You know, in regular data flows, the name of the columns have to match exactly. That's how it appends. In here, you can actually choose what you want to append. And you could choose, and the names of the fields don't have to match. So it's nice to have this in the UI. So I appended these two lists together, and then I used this one called transform. At first, when I saw transform, I was like, what the heck does that mean, right? It's a little bit laggy here too, as you can see, because it's in beta. But this gives you a lot of options to work with each of your columns. And particularly, you can bucket values in here pretty easily. You can put a formula in here, and it'll make the formula based on whichever column you're on. So let me see if we have a number on here. Oh my gosh, my thing is laggy. I'm so sorry. Anyway, whatever column that you use on here that has a number, it will go ahead and you could say, like, you know, first, or starts with, and it knows it's that column that it's looking at. Let me try a different one. Oh God, don't do that. Sorry. It's a little touchy right now in beta, so I'm always afraid I'm gonna mess something up. But you can trim it, you can do a substring, split, uppercase, lowercase. This is really handy if you're cleaning data. You can replace. You can even put zeros where there's nulls, which is really cool. You can extract out of it. You can do the formula, bucket, edit attributes, and drop columns. So let's say we got this all done, and then I decided I didn't need last name. I could take last name off of it. So I could spend all day on this because this is really, really nifty, but I think you get the point of what it does. So the next one is the same. The aggregate node is what I showed you in the last slide, or the last data set on here. What I used this one for was I just wanted to count the IDs of all the visitors. Like, how many visitors do we have altogether? 2,000. Well, that makes sense because these are both a list of 1,000. And I want to make sure that, you know, all of them went through the append correctly. Cool. Oh, okay. So this, we had to make, now you can't do multiple aggregates in the same node. There might be scenarios that you can. I found that I had to make a new one for it. And so same thing that I showed you in the last, I just went ahead and did some calculations on here. This is not something for the faint of heart. This is for data people who really, really love data, who want to clean it and manipulate it. And, you know, if you're pulling a Salesforce object and you need it to be exactly how it comes out of Salesforce, you probably won't be going in here to do that. One other thing that transform does, and I'm trying to find the function in here, but you can change a dimension to a measure, and that's what I did here. So I know we've all done this, right? I brought the IDs in, which were just numbers, and they came in as numbers, and I wanted to turn the IDs into a dimension. So I just did it right here. And the nice part is that I didn't have to wait for my data set to run 2 hours and then find out that, oops, I didn't, format that dimension correctly, right? Or the number correctly to a dimension, and now I got to go back. You see it right here, what you've done or what you haven't done. And same thing, the output, keep editing. The output node here, it's very, very touchy, as you can see. The output node allows you to make, name it whatever you want, make any additional, changes based on like what you see here, make sure that everything is correct. This was a very, very small data set, but what I found is really cool is that you can go in here and make a small mini data set, and maybe you don't run it every day, every hour, but you can make all your calculations, and then you can pull that into a dashboard as you need, or even augment to another data flow that you don't have this functionality on. Now, if I go back to the slides, I'm going to leave you with this, which is, this is the list of what's coming up in the next release. So that's already a lot that I showed you. And I love my job, but I'm a little bit nervous about the fact that, the UI is changing because we get to learn something new here. I'm excited and nervous at the same time, but as you can see, all the things that it couldn't do when we were looking through there are coming. And you're going to want to move those nodes around like you do in the Dataflow UI. They don't move around. You basically have to put them together like Tinker Toys. You put one piece, the stick, one piece, and the stick. So in Winter, it's going to come out where you can move them around and you can save them and repurpose them. Safe harbor, but this was given to me from the PM, Tim, over this about because he was like, don't try to do any of these things yet, because they won't be here until the next release. Does anybody have any questions? Because I went through that really, really fast for the sake of time.
Not really. There was a question.
It's crickets.
Hold on, there was a question for you. One second, because you're the one who plays with this the most. So let me find the question.
Nah, not me, right?
Okay, is it possible to start from the replicated table from the new data prep tool?
Oh, yeah. So for example, if we were going to pull in, when we're first pulling in data, I went ahead and made you examples only because I was scared. I didn't want any like the bugs to come out here, but you have this choice. All data, your data set or your connected objects. So this would show us anything that's connected. So you pull this right out of replication. So if I wanted accounts and I'm going to attach them in here somehow, I click on accounts. I would recommend making this row size as small as you can to 1,000, because that can make it, take a little bit to load. You can search your columns. It takes your standard columns that you've already picked or defined. This can be a lot of work if you have like 500 columns in here, because then you'd have to click all of them. Hopefully you don't have that scenario. And then you just click next. And now we can make a new data set. But as you can see, like even though this moves around, I can't attach this to that one or this one. You see, like I can just make a couple of different data sets on the same page. I hope that answers your question.
Yep.
Okay, cool. And as we progress in learning what this does, I'm sure we will have more meetings about it. But thank you guys for having me. Oh, and I didn't even introduce myself. For those of you who are on the call, if you don't know me, I'm Jennifer Shier.